Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our Future 101 podcast. We have a special guest here today. This is Regan. Why don't you go ahead and do a quick introduction?
Hi guys, my name is Regan. I am a York University student. I'm doing a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology. I'm in my first year and it's off to a pretty tough start.
Well, tell me about your university experience a little bit. I mean, you're a first year student in kinesiology. You started this September. So tell me about that.
So I started off in September. I had recently received a diagnosis for my long-lasting chronic illness. So I registered with Accessibility Services under permanent disability, and I was offered accommodations that were helping me get through my classes. And then by the time October hit, the whole vaccination mandate kind of rolled out and started getting some threatening emails because I hadn't disclosed my status. Based on this, they said that I would be de-enrolled because I had not disclosed. I wasn't comfortable with that.
Right.
So I went to my geneticist. He's from the Mayo Clinic, and I received a medical exemption from the COVID vaccine and additional vaccinations just due to the nature of my illness. And I submitted it to the exemption office at York University, and they denied it. So when I asked, hi, why was it denied? I answered them. I was very polite, just wondering, because I knew that I had met all the criteria. So they sent a link with the Ontario government guidelines for exemptions, and I had everything that I needed. I listed an allergic reaction. I had a specialist. It was on letterhead. It had my name. It had my date of birth. It had the reason. It also states that you don't even have to specifically say what your medical condition is in the letter because that's private medical information.
Right.
And I went the extra step and did that to make them understand, hey, this is my condition. Like, I absolutely cannot be getting this vaccination. And they said no. So after I'd followed up and said, hey, I do fall within the guidelines, they just sent the guidelines back again and said, this is what we're following. You do not apply. So I resubmitted my exemption through the YU screen portal because they just kept changing me to unvaccinated. So I kept submitting it, and they just continued to deny it.
Okay.
So the woman that I was dealing with, her name was Carolyn, and I kind of looked into her position to see what kind of authority she had. So she's actually just an administrative person at the university, not a medical professional, not somebody who even deserves to know my medical information. And she actually responded and said, hey, I Googled your illness, and I found this article that says you should be able to get it. Hope this helps. Thanks. And I was baffled by that. Just like the audacity to tell me, hey, your Mayo Clinic geneticist doesn't know better than I do. And completely disregarded my illness. It was incredibly ableist, the way that she had spoken to me. And this went on for 6 to 8 weeks. And then around December, I was de-enrolled. And I was pretty hurt by that because I'd fought so hard. And at this point, I had never once been on campus. I haven't attended any in-person classes this year, and that was mostly due to my disability accommodations. I had asked for remote learning because it works better for me. So that was kind of the route that I had taken. So once I had been de-enrolled and I contacted the Human Rights Commission of Ontario, they said I had a case on the basis of discrimination due to my disability. So I approached the school with that, and I was still de-enrolled. The adjudicator said they couldn't help. I talked to the Human Rights Office at York, and they said that my exemption was worded wrong because it said something like, I suggest she doesn't get a COVID vaccination, or I wouldn't recommend it. Not that she should not get this immediately right now.
Okay.
So they said that that language was not appropriate. So the university took that as me being able to get it still.
Wow, holy shit. Okay.
Yeah,
So there's a lot to talk about here.
so much.
Let's begin with with the doctor, right? So you said it's a doctor from Mayo Clinic,
Hmm.
and Mayo Clinic is one of the most highly regarded medical institutions in the
Absolutely.
world.
Yeah.
And so this medical doctor advised that you should not get
Yeah.
the vaccine, and he wrote out an exemption for you.
Yes.
And so there's some sort of person at York University that's making personal health decisions for you, disregarding what a Mayo Clinic doctor has said.
Absolutely. And she's in an administrative role.
Yeah.
She's not,
She's not even a
yes,
higher up
she's
or
not a
anything.
higher up, she's not the dean, she's not a medical professional, and she just got to play judge and jury over my health.
Wow, that's messed up. Okay, so and then another thing, you mentioned that she just went on into um, search up your condition and tell you, oh, hey, I looked this up. Here's an article, and
Yes.
you should be able to get it.
Like, she literally pulled up an article, and the article actually stated some people with this condition can get it, others cannot. It depends on the individual.
Mhm. So then
Okay, I'm one of the ones who can't. The bottom line, that's what my medical professional
yeah,
said.
that's messed up. That's crazy.
Yeah,
It's insane how they're denying exemptions for these particular cases,
right.
because these would be, I would assume, the ones that they would accept, um,
Absolutely.
because they happen so
Hmm.
infrequently, right?
I I kind of thought the exemptions that were being turned down might be ones that weren't done properly or that were a bit of a stretch. Even
Hmm.
still, they should not have been turned down.
Yeah.
Anybody has the right to make a medical decision based on their own body, but I knew that I had every single aspect of the letter that I needed. I had done everything correctly. There was zero reason for it to be turned down. And I responded multiple times. This went on for 6 to 8 weeks. And I
Mhm.
said, this is a valid legal medical exemption. 101%. And she just kept responding. The same woman, Carolyn. And she went, it has been denied. Stop emailing us.
What was their reason for denying you?
They didn't have one. They said it's not acceptable. It doesn't meet the guidelines. And then they'd send the provincial guidelines,
Hmm.
and I'd go through them, and I went, yeah, that actually does mean it. Because part of my illness is a comorbidity that causes severe allergic reactions, including anaphylaxis, to anything, medications especially, um, foods, anything. Anything can set me off into a severe allergic reaction.
Hmm. So it's life-threatening.
Yeah,
Anaphylaxis is
it's
life-threatening.
absolutely life-threatening. So that's what my exemption stated,
Hmm.
and they just refused to accept that because the two criteria that they say are only acceptable are heart problems after a vaccination or severe allergic reaction to a component in the vaccine.
So basically, what they're stating is the only exemptions they would accept is if you, despite all the recommendations of your doctor, you go in, get a vaccine, almost die, or have a severe allergic reaction or have a heart condition that is not fixable,
Yeah.
then we'll exempt you. So you have to injure yourself to
Yes,
get an exemption.
exactly. Like I have a family member who had their first dose
Hmm.
and they're in their 20s, very healthy, no problems. They developed myocarditis. And they were able to get an exemption after fighting and fighting and fighting their doctor for months. And then their exemption expired. Like
Oh, it has
it's
an
been a few
expiry
months,
date?
so now you can get your second dose.
Wait a minute. Exemptions have an expiry date?
Yes, they do. You have to list an end time to the exemption. So my doctor said until further studies are done and the true implications are known, which may take years.
Hmm.
So that was my deadline. That's what my doctor said. Other doctors say, wait 3 months, then I'll send them to go get theirs. But at the moment, they're just delaying it. They don't actually want you to be exempt from getting it at all. They'll allow you to maybe delay it,
Hmm.
but then you still have to go get it,
Right.
despite permanent heart damage.
That's fucked up.
Yeah.
That's really messed up. I had no idea the university was going to that length. I knew they were denying exemptions and they were just really strict about them, but I had no idea they were going that far. And so my question now is, why do you think they're doing that? What's your opinion on that?
I feel that a lot of people on the other side who are vaccinated, who wear their mask 24/7, things like that,
Hmm.
feel elite. They feel as though they're above those of us who have not chosen to do that because that's our right to choose.
Hmm.
And by removing these policies, they allow us back in. We get to function as normal people in society again. And I think that scares some people.
Hmm. Well, everybody wants everyone else around them um, to give them validation as to
Absolutely.
right, because if it's like if you are against what they did, that means you're in contradiction with their fantasy world, and
Right.
then you're not conforming to that, and then they feel like, oh my God, I must have done the wrong thing because these
Yes.
people are not doing it.
We demonstrate that maybe they did something wrong.
Hmm.
And they start to feel a lot of guilt about that. The amount of times that people told me I didn't deserve a hospital bed or I'd be dead in 2 months from COVID is astronomical. And I think that they're just stunned to see that, no, we haven't dropped dead. We're doing fine. Like,
We're
I,
still
I
here.
even had COVID
Hmm.
and I recovered because I did what I needed to do. I followed a healthy lifestyle. I took my zinc, my vitamin D, the things that actually were assisting me in getting better
Hmm.
because my health is my priority. This whole burden of carrying everybody else's health has been a really strange kind of shift in the past couple of years where suddenly I've become responsible for everyone around me. But I believe in taking care of my own health first. So that's kind of the step that I took. And everybody doesn't like to really see that.
Hmm. So you're a prime example here of, I mean, you're mentioning that you take care of your health first. That's like your main concern in your life at the moment. And you're actually deciding not to disclose your vaccination status, and you go to a highly trained professional to tell you the right things to do, and you are actually taking care of your health. And
Mhm.
then you get a lot of people who are vaccinated and they're just disclosing it all over the place. They would tell you, oh, I don't want to worry about my health, like that's for medical professionals, right?
Exactly.
Because they don't want to take responsibility, but
Yeah.
it's your health.
Yes, it's
Why
your
wouldn't you want to
health.
take
Yes.
responsibility for it?
And suddenly, like, the whole "you're gonna kill Granny"
Hmm.
line just is all over the place.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating because the true implications of COVID-19 are known now. We understand the real severity of it, and at some point, you need to start living your lives. You need to make that risk-benefit analysis.
Hmm.
As somebody who should be in the high-risk group for COVID-19, I have never once cowered in fear or expected other people to for the sake of me.
Yeah.
If you want to stay home, you do that. If you want to wear your mask, absolutely. You want to get your vaccine, go for it. But you cannot expect me to do all of those things because you're afraid.
Yeah.
That's my biggest problem with it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, because they're just trying to, again, have everybody conform to what they think is right.
Mhm.
And that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable in a Western society. And another thing I wanted to point out is you went through hell trying to go through exemptions, trying to get an exemption.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, a lot of people, like even in our movement, in the freedom movement, whatever you want to call it, but those who advocate for pro-choice or no vaccination,
Mhm.
etc., they are a lot of the students are just begging for exemptions. They're going for exemptions,
Mhm.
and they have been largely unsuccessful because of, like, this. You're a prime example of this.
Yeah.
You should be the one who is getting exemptions based on their
Mhm.
criteria, but they're denying you. So how do you expect without meeting the criteria to be accepted,
Exactly.
right?
And I never wanted to disclose.
Hmm.
Submitting a medical exemption wasn't something that I felt in my heart I wanted to do. But after I had done it and they denied it, despite it being legal and valid,
Hmm.
that seriously drove me. And I fought with them for weeks and weeks and weeks, not because I cared if they accepted my medical exemption, but because I knew that they were wrong.
Hmm.
So I sent them. This is the Human Rights Commission. This is your responsibility for disabled students. These are the criteria that need to be met for an exemption. And I meet all of them. And I put them in their place. And they just refused to listen. And it was the same one woman, like running this exemption office.
Right.
That's it.
And so you're just dealing with this one woman
Yeah,
that's unqualified to do any of that.
exactly.
Wow. Yeah, and I mean, and that's the detriment of the movement here is that because a lot of the students are so focused on getting an exemption, getting back to school, but just relax, take a step back and see what you're doing if it's right. Because submitting an exemption like you did, you're just trying to get back to school, you're just trying to live a normal life
Hmm.
and get your education. But at the end of the day, you are giving all the power to this one stupid woman that is just
Exactly.
there
Yeah.
making a huge decision for you because she basically decided on your career, whether you're going to
Exactly.
study or you're not going to
Yeah.
study. And this is somebody who is not qualified to do that, has no
Hmm.
authority to do that. And so I don't understand why so many people are so focused on these exemptions and thinking that that is the route that you're going to go for, or maybe a legal case, that is the route you're going to go for, because clearly they're all being denied because you're handing all the power to the universities.
Yeah.
And we're not here to ask for permission to be
No.
admitted because that is our right. It's not a privilege. Many people say,
Exactly.
oh, it's a privilege to go to school. No, no, no.
Yes,
It's your right.
that has been my least favorite trend. I saw a an article today about a student at Ontario Tech, I think, who is fighting a legal case because they can't graduate now.
Hmm.
They got de-enrolled for not accepting the vaccination. And there's about 200 comments, and 198 of them are saying privileges, not rights.
Hmm.
And I cannot understand that argument. Like when Canadians can't move freely in their own country, when we cannot get an education, when kids are being forced out of sports, when families can't feed their children, like how does anybody think that that's okay
Yeah.
based on a personal medical decision? It's baffling.
No, it's pretty crazy, and it's the kind of the nature of the students, or I guess the culture that it is now. We don't see it much at York University,
Hmm.
but when we do go to our events at U of T or any of these highly regarded institutions, this is where we see students and they're willing to speak to us. They come up to us and
Hmm.
we're like, okay, we want our right to study without getting something in, and disclosing our
Right.
status. These are private things. And they say, oh, you know what? Actually, studying is a privilege, so I don't mind if they,
Right.
if they just kick you out. And that's just the nature of the world right now, is that the culture is in the wrong place
Right.
because it's not a privilege to have an education. It
Hmm.
is your right to have an education.
Exactly.
You live in a Western society. You
Yes,
don't
if you
live.
think it's a privilege, then you're not in the right country.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to live that way and you want to consider everything a privilege, then you're welcome to move away to a country that does that. But
Exactly.
this is not what we accept here in
Hmm.
Canada. At least that's not what we did a few years
Right.
back.
My sister is fourth year at U of T, and the culture there is really disheartening.
Hmm.
Like they have other protests that are hanging banners demanding masks, demanding ventilation, demanding booster doses. U of T even sent out an email saying, "Hey, everybody go get your booster," because I'm sure that they're going to mandate that next. And it's been really disheartening, especially she's a part of a couple of clubs and groups over there, and they were doing outdoor events and we're still mandating
Yeah.
the vaccine for an outdoor social event that she should have been able to attend and she couldn't. They went against the guidelines, if you want to follow the
Right.
guidelines so religiously. They went an extra step further. They've excluded her from every single piece of their group. And now she's going to graduate without experiencing the past 2.5 years of her university education.
Yeah, that's incredible. That fucking sucks.
Yeah.
I can't believe what the schools are doing, and they're not really facing any consequences
Yeah.
for their
She
actions.
can't even get her graduation photos taken.
Hmm. Or even go to graduation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah. I
How's that
mean, I
okay?
missed my graduation because of this too, and
Yeah. So did my brother. He was at U of T,
yeah,
graduated in 2020.
yeah. And
He's
these are
still.
rare events. You don't get to
Yes, you don't
graduate
get to do
university
that.
every
More than
day.
one. Yeah. He was the first child in my family to
Hmm.
graduate, firstborn son. It was a really big moment for him.
Yeah.
And he had to sit on the couch at home and watch
Yeah.
after 4 years of hard work.
Yeah, that's insane. Anyways, well, you mentioned something about the human rights case. Did you file a human rights case
Um,
against the
I'm
university?
in the process. It's a little bit lengthy,
Hmm.
and if I'm being completely honest, it was a bit of a traumatizing experience to be gaslit and
Yeah.
told that nothing's wrong with me. Um, so I need to take a step back from it for a little bit, but I am planning to pursue it and personally name the woman who has caused all this hardship.
Hmm.
Um, I did get back into school in December based on my disability accommodations, but it required me reaching out to each of my professors and my TAs and demanding accommodations for remote learning. And then they had to take that and specifically write to the dean of students or the faculty of health
Hmm.
and say, "Hi, I'm giving her these accommodations. She can keep coming to my classes." So I've had to do additional work in all my classes. I've had a full course load. I'm a permanently disabled student. And now I have this whole human rights case looming over my head.
Hmm.
I absolutely need to file because what they did to me was appalling and it should never ever happen to another student. But I'm seeing it everywhere. It's happening to everyone. I even did an article with the Sun, Toronto Sun, and they were seriously baffled. Like I was in the middle of this interview with him, and he was like, "What happened to you? Like, so you can't go at all?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "So you got kicked out of all your classes?" I was like, "Yes." He's like, "So you've never been on campus?" I was like, "Yes." He's like, "What is this? How is this possibly okay? Who allowed this to happen?" That's what I'm finding. People just don't know what's
Yeah.
happening. They're so oblivious. So the only way to get them to understand how difficult it's been for me and so many other students and children, even adults, you have to share your stories. You have to get it out there for people to actually understand.
Yeah. I mean, you have to go public with the stories
Hmm.
and share the details. And what you're doing is showing an example to everybody else that hey, this shit is happening and
Yeah.
it's all over the place,
Yeah.
and everybody needs to know about it, and we need to fix it
Yeah.
as a society.
And there are people who say, well, I believe that those with exemptions should be allowed to go because you're exempt. But they don't understand that nobody's either writing exemptions or giving exemptions or accepting exemptions. So that's why I've been sharing this side of the story
Hmm.
because I did go that route because that's what I thought I needed to do at the time.
Right.
So I've been sharing that and they're like, "Oh, you mean they're not accepting medical exemptions that are perfectly legal and valid?" I'm like, "No." So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't fucking matter. And that's the thing here is that a lot of, like I mentioned before, a lot of students, but there are organizations, student organizations that are focused on these things. One of the student organizations that we've heard of and students have told us about it is Amity, Project Amity, and what they're advocating for is, we're gonna make exemptions and everybody's gonna get exemptions, and we're going to get you back into school. But the problem is that it's not about that. And it
Yeah,
really hurts the movement because they're so focused on this one particular thing that doesn't fucking
exactly.
work. And
Yes,
then everybody else thinks, oh, I don't need to do anything. I'm just going to get an exemption and I'll be fine.
right.
But guess what? Even if you do get your exemption, you didn't, and you have absolute reason to get one, but you didn't. What makes you think that you would?
Exactly.
And even if you do, let's just say you do. What what stops the university from telling you 6 months from now, oh, sorry, your exemption's expired?
Exactly. Yes, because when your doctor or medical professional writes it, they
Hmm.
have to specifically state that it is this long. This is how long your exemption lasts.
Right.
And most doctors are fearful because
Yeah.
everybody's supposed to get vaccinated. That's just,
That's another thing with
yeah,
the doctors is they're fearful to do what they're supposed to do. They're fearful to
yes,
do their job to
absolutely.
assess whether their own patient should get a medical treatment or not, because then they're going to be out of their,
Hmm.
they're going to lose their license.
And then I couldn't get a QR code. Not that I want one,
Yeah.
but I couldn't get one because mine was out of province because it's from Florida,
Right.
since that was the only place I could get proper medical assistance.
Yeah.
Was going out of state, paying out of pocket. They don't accept insurance because it sways their judgment. They want to be able to do what they think is best for their patient, which I completely agree with. But it cost me a lot of money to pay out
Hmm.
of pocket and go elsewhere because my own province won't look out for me.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. That's the only place you can get actual medical advice,
Yeah,
because here you go and it's like, your doctor is not going to take care of you. They're going to take care of their own ass trying not to lose their
absolutely.
job.
Yeah,
So why do you think going to a medical professional in Canada or even to your family doctor is going to give you actual medical advice
right.
when they're just scared and they're afraid for their own job and they're just going to advise you whatever the government tells them.
Exactly. I think that people need to start realizing the only way out is mass non-compliance. Stop with the masks, stop with the exemptions, just stop. Stop it all. If we all stop, what are they going to do? In New York, they mandated the booster shot for healthcare workers,
Hmm.
and the deadline came around. And they suddenly sent out another email and said, "We've decided not to go forward with this," because nobody got it. Nobody got their boosters, and they knew they were going to lose all of their staff.
Hmm.
And that's my problem with a lot of people arguing, what about our healthcare workers when the Freedom Convoy was going by? Like, what about the healthcare workers? That's my favorite convoy. I'm like, okay, what about the ones that you let get fired? You want to argue about staff shortages. You just allowed hundreds of your fellow employees to be fired.
Yeah.
Why didn't you care then?
Yeah, what happened?
Yep,
The hypocrisy
exactly.
is insane.
It is. It's so frustrating to watch.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous, and it's very sad what's going on, but I mean, you mentioned about noncompliance, mass noncompliance, and this is a prime example of why it works. Like you mentioned
Hmm.
in New York, the nurses just decided, hey, I'm not fucking getting it. What are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
They're not going to fire everybody. They're
Hmm.
not just going to, close the hospitals because, oh, sorry, no, nobody's
Exactly.
complying. No, they're just going to say, oh, yeah, we decided to take a step back because it was the
Right.
wrong thing to
Yes.
do, right?
There was even a restaurant in my little town
Hmm.
who decided that they were going to mandate the vaccine. You had to be double vaxxed to sit on the patio in winter, which was just nothing that aligned with the guidelines at all.
Hmm.
So they received so much backlash. They took that back and were like, okay, sorry. Because that's the only way that you're going to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Mass non-compliance.
Yes, absolutely. So, in terms of mass non-compliance, a lot of people feel like, especially students, I don't know, it's just the nature of our culture,
Hmm.
is that they feel like, oh, if I do it by myself, it's not really going to affect anything. It's too little.
Hmm.
But the problem with that thinking is that when you actually do something like that and you show publicly that you're non-compliant, for example, you have a in-person class, take off your mask and go in and see what
Right.
happens. Because at that moment, you give invitation to other students to do the
Hmm.
same. You are being a leader and you're showing that you're non-compliant.
Absolutely.
I bet there's other students in that same classroom that feel the same.
Yes. Like I go to the grocery store without one.
Hmm.
And I just smile at everybody. I'm
Right.
like, hi, have a great day. It's nice to see you. And they're always kind of confused. And then you see those couple that are like, wow, I want to do that. And then you'll run into somebody in the aisle a little bit later and they won't have one. They'll be like, I love to see your face. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think that people fully grasp the psychological damage that masks have done to children
Yeah.
and youth and everybody. I, it's so hard to feel human emotion without seeing somebody's face.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big deal for sure, especially for children development.
Hmm.
But I mean, in terms of the masking, as what I've seen happen recently, because I go to the store
Hmm.
without a mask for a while now, and usually I would get, once in a while, once in a blue moon, I would get, an angry customer that,
Yeah.
tells me, oh, you should move away or whatever. and then you just laugh at them. It's like you're just crazy. But what recently I started getting is more customers without masks, and I actually get people coming up to me and saying, "Oh, it's nice to see a face. Thank you for doing it."
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I've definitely had my fair share of run-ins. I go to the mall without one, and that one's a little bit more tricky because there's all the separate stores, but
Hmm.
I don't really care. So I
Yeah.
went into one and they were like, "Hi, love, do you want a mask?" I was like, "Nope, thanks." And they were like, "Oh." So then I just did my shopping and then I went to another one and this woman started yelling at me. She's like, "You have to have a mask in here." I was like, "Oh, I have an exemption, but thanks." She was like, But you have to wear one." I was like, "That's not what an exemption
No.
means, but okay." I was like, "I will not be shopping here. Have a
Yeah.
great day."
Yeah. And I think that's the way to change the culture because you're
Yeah.
just showing thousands and thousands of people every day that, hey, this is normal.
Yeah.
Look, I do not wear a mask. It's been 2 years and I haven't died.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't had any severe consequences because by the nature of things, like those people who just did not vaccinate and do not wear masks, do not follow public health guidelines, naturally, if it was a real pandemic and real shit was going down, we wouldn't be around anymore. And we
Absolutely.
would we would either have, face consequences or we would have severe health reasons
Hmm.
to not do that anymore,
Right.
right? But that's not happening. That's not the case, and we're
Hmm.
seeing more and more people doing that despite all the things that are going
Hmm.
on.
Data that was recently released, because everyone makes the argument there are more vaccinated than unvaccinated. So the vaccinated cases are always going to be higher.
Hmm.
But in Ontario, per 100,000 right now, there are more COVID cases in the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated.
Yeah.
And that just, like, it's right there. It's easy to see. And it's just frustrating because everybody assumes that you're going to die and that we're putting everybody at risk when we just know that's not the case. And it's fine if you thought that once upon a time, but science grows and develops, so do people. You need to be able to adjust your mindset as things come in. There are still people living in March 2020.
Yeah,
So much
exactly.
information has come out since then. You need to be able to work towards it and accept, hey, I was wrong about this. I'm going to move forward and be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I wanted to bring up is that the the province has decided to lift the vaccination mandates from being, compulsory for businesses, and that's, March 1st
Hmm.
that it's happening. And this episode will be released a little bit later, but at the moment we are living in a world that is not supposed to really have vaccination mandates anymore
Hmm.
because the government said that we don't need those. However, at the end of the day, nothing has really changed. Are you able to go back to school?
No.
No, you're still de-enrolled, you're still
Yeah,
deregistered, your exemption's not accepted,
exactly.
you're not studying in the school, and you're not getting your education, and you're not pursuing a career that you like. And quite frankly, we still have a lot of people in our group that are thinking, this is done, this is over. Oh, the
Right.
province is lifting the mandates. I don't need to fight anymore. I can go to my favorite restaurant. I can
Exactly.
go to my, basic job.
And that's
But
just not the case.
that's not the case because universities are still mandating it. A lot of businesses are still mandating it.
Yes, because the government didn't restrict them. They just said, we're going to lift the vaccine passports, but you can choose to keep them in.
Hmm.
How how does that make any sense? Like an arena in Ontario has the Oshawa Generals playing or something.
Hmm.
And you don't need your vax to go see that game. But then the Harlem Globetrotters are coming in a couple of weeks, and you have to have your vaccine to see that game at the exact same place in the exact same arena because science. It makes perfect sense. Like, and I don't understand it. We need our elected officials to step up and ban the use of vaccination mandates.
Hmm.
It needs to happen. These mandates are putting people at so much risk, and people have lost so much. For me, my illness is degenerative, so I'm only going to get worse from here. I have a wheelchair. I don't use it much right now, but in the next couple of years, that's probably where I'll be headed.
Hmm.
And losing the past 2 years has been detrimental. I watched my whole career go to loss because I was kicked out of my sport. I'm not schooling. the way that I need to be. So I've missed out on that. I've missed out on countless experiences that I'm never gonna get back.
Yeah.
Like, these were my prime years for me to do what I wanted to do and live my life, and I lost all of it. I missed out on high school graduation. I missed out on coming to university. Everything like that that was so important to me, I have now lost. And people just aren't really grasping that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's making me so frustrated with the current state. They're ignorant and they're oblivious, and mostly because they don't care to know. And that's really hurtful to see.
Yeah, they don't really care about your individual situation that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care the consequences that it has. So many businesses have been lost, so many lives have been lost, people falling into depression, into stress. They have no idea what's going on. All of this has caused so much suffering. And like you mentioned, you're missing very, very rare occasions where people are not really going to get back. You only graduate high school once in a lifetime,
Absolutely.
and you're only a first year university student once in a lifetime. And you only get to be, 19, 20, 21 years old at your prime age to do the sport that you love to
Mm-hmm.
do. That's only once in a lifetime, and it's not something that you can restrict just because you decided
Mm-hmm.
to, when there's really no actual health reason to do so.
I had actually initially planned to take a gap year
Mhm.
after high school and travel because this is probably the prime of my health right now. Um, I'm not going to be able to roam the streets of Italy in a wheelchair in a few years.
Right.
So that was my plan. I was going to travel the world. And then they said, no, borders are closed and you're not allowed to go. So then I was like, okay, school. Let's pursue school. I'm really, really, really loving my education. And kinesiology is what I pursued because I love fitness and I wanted to move while I still could.
Hmm.
And now I can't go to school. So I didn't end up doing anything that I could have done or that I wanted to do because of these mandates. And now I'm going to have to wait and do it when I'm not as healthy as I am right now.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's an incredible story, and it's just so baffling what the university has done to restrict all of that, and what the government and the institutions, what they have done to restrict all the things that you're supposed to experience in life and that you wanted to do. And for what?
Exactly.
For what is this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's discuss your university experience. You did mention that you really like your program.
Mm-hmm.
You like kinesiology and health science. I graduated from kinesiology and health science and BSc,
Yeah,
exactly same program.
awesome.
So tell me what your first thoughts are of the program.
So, for the most part, I really enjoy my classes. It would absolutely be better if I was on campus. I've been accommodated for labs through disability, so I've just been doing that from home.
Hmm.
Um, Kin 1020 I'm loving because it's fully just science-based, really awesome, learning all about the body systems and the way that we move, which is exactly what I love. I loved my biology course. It was amazing. Even my practicum course, although it was online, I did enjoy it a lot.
Right.
I'm really struggling with Kin 1000. It's the sociocultural perspectives. It's it's very difficult to get through. This week's lectures were about the social model of disability, and I found a lot of the ideas to be pretty harmful that were portrayed. But they were talking about the Pfizer trials and how 0.004% or whatever experienced Bell's palsy. And then they talked about how the internet grabbed hold of this and anti vaxxers took it and ran with it. And it wasn't actually a big deal. It doesn't matter that these people got Bell's palsy because the risk of COVID is so much higher. And I was astonished for them to just completely discredit the people who have been harmed by the vaccine.
Hmm.
It was really difficult to see that. And they did a critical thinking lecture at the start of the year. And they did another one. They mentioned the same man, Andrew Wakefield, which I'm sure you've probably heard of. He did a study on MMR vaccines,
Hmm.
which is a little bit unrelated, but same kind of idea. And she shared these ideas that weren't actually what the study was about. He just said more research needed to be done towards something, and they took it and spun it a way that it just was. And it was really kind of strange to see the way that they made these things seem terrible when they just weren't.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about critical thinking without thinking critically. And in this lecture this week, they were saying how the anti-vaccination movement is anti-disability.
Yeah.
Because we question, why are people getting Bell's palsy? Why are people ending up with encephalitis? Why are these things happening to people? So that makes us anti-disability.
We're actually concerned about
Yes,
those
I'm
issues.
concerned about those people. And as someone with a disability, I never want anybody else to have a disability. It's pro-science to question why people are having issues after a medical procedure.
So then, do you think university is a place for critical thinking, a place for freedom of speech and freedom of, flourishing of ideas? Is that something that you've experienced as a first year student?
Absolutely not. And like I said, I have an older sibling, fourth year, and a sibling above her who has already graduated. And they both had the exact same experiences. U of T, for example, has a lot of funding through Big Pharma. This
Yep.
professor that is spewing about the Pfizer trials and Bell's palsy not mattering and COVID-19 being way worse is the head coordinator of the COVID initiative at York University. So there's obviously, their hands are dipped in different areas that, to me, I need to follow the money. I need to follow who you're funded by, why you're saying the things that you're saying, because it's important.
Yeah.
It's totally important. Because at this point, you can't say anything you want. I sent a very wordy reflection this week about those lectures, and I said, I completely disagree with these. I'm really hurt that you would display these ideas. This is not truthful. And I never got a response. Because that's not allowed. Critical
Hmm.
thinking, freedom of speech. If you disagree with the lecture ideas, then you're not cut out to be in university.
Hmm.
That's not the way that it works. It's just not.
And another aspect of this is students are being penalized. I have two personal stories about this because I took Kin 1000, and this is
Mm.
before COVID started. So 2016 is when I was in my first year, and I was doing Kin 1000, the same professors that you've had. They haven't changed. And when I was writing, you do the big essay
Yeah.
after like maybe half the course has gone by. You have to write that big essay, and you basically have to only follow the curriculum because I went against it. I did not agree with the things they were talking
Yes.
about. I thought it was harmful. It was detrimental to society. I didn't like the things that they were telling me,
Yeah.
that, oh, this is right and the rest is wrong. And
Yes.
so I did bring that up in my essay. I wrote it up, and I ended up being penalized because they said, oh, sorry, you didn't follow the curriculum.
Right.
But isn't the whole point of the fucking course
Yeah.
to criticize what is being talked about?
Yeah.
Criticize society,
Yes.
right? I'm criticizing you because that's what your course is teaching me to do.
Yep.
But hey, you don't like to be criticized
Yep.
because you know the things you're doing is wrong.
Yep. I was penalized because for this essay, I had written out my outline. It was, why should practicums be mandatory? So I was like, okay. So I talked about immune systems and how T cells act, and sleep and how your brain works, and the brain pathways to develop empathy, and why exercise is good. And I got a whole written up thing saying, this is sociocultural. I need you to do less science, more, just look at society as a whole. And that just didn't make sense to me because my arguments were still valid. It still made more sense than what I ended up writing.
Mhm.
And I wasn't really impressed with that.
Yeah, no, it really defeats the purpose of university.
Hmm.
And recently, I got a message from one of my friends who's a first year student, just like you. He is in the business program though, but he is
Hmm.
taking a sociocultural course, just like Kin 1000, but something different.
Right.
And what happened was that the teacher basically brought up a question for uh, kind of class discussion regarding, oh, supporting the freedom convoy and supporting like the freedom movement is so detrimental, and mandates are so amazing, they save so many lives,
Right.
and basically saying that this is the way you should think. And then one kid in the class criticized this, said, "Hey, I don't think you should be doing that. You
Yeah.
should just teach me the fucking
Right.
course."
Yeah, that has nothing to do with this.
And then he got shut down, and the teacher said, "Oh, we're not going to be talking about this." And she just like flipped out and
Wow.
basically closed the conversation. And my friend who has been on the fence about all of this for a while is like, I just don't feel like I am part of a university and I'm getting the
No,
things that I have paid for, because I feel like I'm being indoctrinated. It's either you
exactly.
believe this way or you're out and we're not going to discuss it.
Right.
Like, your opinions are not welcome here. But he's like, I always thought, university is a place for like discussion of that. I thought you would be,
Yes.
lifted and cheered on for doing that. But it seems like it's not an experience that any of us have had.
Absolutely not.
It's turned into a place of business and in place of indoctrination
Yeah,
to tell you how to think
there's
and
too
what to
much
think.
funding. There's too
Yeah,
much money from big corporations who have other ideas, so the school is following that.
yeah,
And it's so evident, especially like U of T.
yeah.
They're one of the worst, but they have the largest funding from Big Pharma. Same
Hence
with
why they're the
Guelph.
worst.
Yes, yes, Guelph is the worst.
Yeah,
Biggest funding from Big Pharma.
yeah.
Like you just need to follow the money, understand the ties and connections, and where people's ideas are truly coming from. Because
Yes.
university is just not a safe space to share your opinions. There's no free speech. There's no critical thinking. It's so harmful to see that this is our next generation.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the conflict of interest is what I wanted to discuss as well, because like in the Kin 1000, you mentioned there's a professor who is actually leading the COVID response team who has a conflict of
Yeah.
interest to tell you how to think,
Hmm.
tell you what to think and how to act and what to
Right.
do with your body. And unfortunately, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
allowed to say your things, because you could say it, but you have to publicly say, "Hey, I am being sponsored by this."
Yes, you should have to disclose those things. Like she's posting in our course page, not to the school, just in our course page, in our announcements about our education. Get your booster shots. Here's where. Like how is that okay?
Yeah, it's not just, I mean, these are private medical things,
Yes,
should be between you and the doctor. Whether you're getting it or you're not getting it, she's not your doctor or he's not your
absolutely.
doctor, and they should not be telling you what to do about your health. That's quite ridiculous. They should just be there to teach the course. Like,
Yes, exactly. I just want to learn. I
yeah.
am exhausted from all of the COVID discussion. That's all propaganda. None of it is factual, and that's all that my courses are filled with.
Hmm.
And it's never two-sided. It's always this is this, believe this, or you're not allowed to be here.
So the whole situation that you're in, and you really want things to get better, get your freedoms back so you can travel and you can
Mhm.
experience life the way you want to. And what is the message that you would have to the rest of your peers and the rest of CSUN group as to what we should do and how can we combat this to resolve this very soon so that you can experience the things you want in
Right.
life and people of our group can follow their career path and not be stopped, because it looks like, I mean, like I mentioned, the vaccine mandates are being lifted,
Right.
but they're not being banned. And so
No.
therefore the institutions are going to continue to enforce them. And a lot of the businesses, the huge
Yeah.
corporations, are going to continue to enforce them,
Yeah.
and they're going to keep them in place because, again, like you mentioned, there's a huge conflict of
And
interest for that.
now, if you go on the government website, they've shifted it to digital ID.
Hmm.
Like, these things aren't going away. They're here to stay, and they're harmful to people. If I could give one message, it would be to listen, not to the news, not to your paid off doctors or professors. Listen to the people who are experiencing it. People in my shoes who have been kicked out of school, kicked out of their sports, who have serious medical issues, who have been barred from attending school. People who have lost their families, people who can't feed their own families, things like that. Like, you need to listen to those people. Because what do I have to gain from lying to you?
Hmm.
Nothing. I've lost everything. I have nothing to gain from lying to you. But big corporations, the government, they gain from giving you the information that they want you to hear and you to believe.
Yeah. And you mentioned, I mean, you joined CSUN quite recently
Mhm.
after you've done your Toronto Sun interview. And my question is, why did you join CSUN? How did you find us? And tell me a
Um,
little bit about that.
so my mom is actually, um, she's been advocating for our side since the start,
Okay.
like April 2020. She's known from the very beginning. Things aren't quite adding up, so she's been advocating and sharing all the information that people should be hearing and aren't hearing. Um, and we found your group a few months back, and I've kind of been slowly following along, watching your podcasts, watching what you're doing, and I really just feel like it's important
Hmm.
being with like-minded people. I lost all my friends. I don't have a single friend from high school. I haven't made a single friend in university. I don't have anything. I lost everything. So finding like-minded people who actually believe what you believe and having that ability to stop feeling helpless. Like I felt so helpless these past 2 years. I've advocated, I've done everything that I can, but there weren't any organizations in place. There wasn't anybody that I could band together with to fight for our freedoms. And I wasn't really in a position to start one on my own. So being able to find concerned students was really amazing because I think it's a good group of students who have all been greatly affected by this and impacted. And I think it's just really important for us to get our message across.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and why did you? So I mean, you were following us for a while, but I'm just trying to understand like what made you decide that okay, I'm actually going to step in and contribute and begin taking
Hmm.
action with the students themselves.
I saw your posts at York University,
Hmm.
and you guys were just standing there, maskless, hanging out with your signs. And I was like, I have not been on campus. I want to be on campus. I want to be one of those students that's making people question things because that's what I believe in. And I'm a very good advocate. I love talking to people. So if I can talk to even one student and change their mind, that would be so rewarding for me.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what pushed me was I saw your events. I was like, this looks like so much fun to get involved with. So I'm really happy that I did.
That's awesome, and you're a prime example now of why these things work and
Hmm.
why people actually begin to take action and come out. Because we are, great leaders just show an example of how to do things. They
Exactly.
don't tell people, oh, you got to
Hmm.
go and do this. They actually go and do it, and and that's what we do. We go to schools,
Hmm.
we speak to students, we show up, and we do this consistently
Hmm.
to just show that there is hope, there is some
Right.
light, and we are here, and we're not being kicked out. There's no,
Hmm.
crazy interactions. All we have
Yeah.
is just conversations, and quite frankly, at York University we uh, honestly we get really great responses there,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of students coming up. It's like it's a big deal that we're there.
Right.
Everybody knows about us.
Yeah. And I was,
So
as a first year, I found that first year students are the most, I don't want to use the word indoctrinated, but that seems fitting right now,
yeah.
where they just don't have critical thinking skills. They have no idea what's happening around them. They're the very first to post the exact opposite of what I say. They're the
Hmm.
very first to share all of the popular posts about, well, this and this and that, and you're a racist, and all these things about the convoy, and students being kicked out, and pulling the rights versus privileges. It's just really disheartening to see because this is my generation. This is who we're trusting to lead the world one day. And I don't feel comfortable with this group of people doing that. So, being a first year, I felt like it was really important to get involved because I know that there's a lot of fourth years. And like you said, you're an alum. And that's amazing because you're obviously entering the workforce. And that's so important to get these mandates out of place. But first years just aren't grasping it, they don't understand at all.
Yeah, that's right. And again, just to all of our students, because we do have a lot of members who are still doubtful that our CSUN events, our in-person CSUN events are not really changing minds, not really doing much. But you're a prime example of that.
Yeah.
You're a student who actually decided to come out and to participate because you thought, hey, this is like a great opportunity
Hmm.
to do something I love doing and speak
Yeah.
with like-minded students and get involved and take action. If we don't need the whole world.
No,
We just need ourselves and
absolutely.
our individual responsibility to go on, take action, take off your mask, attend events,
Yep.
and contribute to the cause in any way or any form that you can based on your skills and your talents. And so if you are so inclined to help out our cause and to speed up this process so that people can experience the world and can travel and can do all the things they want to do in life, reach out to csun.ca and we'll chat with you soon. Thank you for coming on today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.